When it comes to precision mapping, people think you need expensive enterprise-level drones. But what if you're short on funds or live in a country where flying a drone over 250 grams means jumping through a lot of regulatory hoops? Well, in this video, I'm going to show you how you can use a sub 250 gram drone to perform survey-grade mapping, and all without breaking the bank. I'll be covering the full process from start to finish, and I'll break it down into chapters so you can jump to the section you need, or just come back later if you can't watch it all in one go. Before we dive in, let's talk about preparation. If you've seen my previous precision mapping series, you'll know a lot of the prep work here is the same. Things like planning your flight area, making sure you've captured enough overlap, and thinking about safety on site are all critical. I'm not going to go into all of those details here again, so if you haven't seen that video series, definitely go check it out. I'll put a link in the description and in the video itself so you can refer back to it. For this video, we'll keep our focus on the tools and the workflow you can use to get accurate results without breaking the bank. Now let's quickly talk about the tools we will be using here. If you've seen any of my previous videos on RTK and GCPs, you'll know that RTK can provide centimeter accurate results very quickly. But if you don't have an RTK capable drone and still need things to be accurate, then this video is for you. But while we will be using some tools that are as cheap as possible, we will still need to use some specialized tools to make our results survey grade accurate. So let's take a look, starting with the hardware which we have laid out here, and let's go through them one by one. First up, ground control points or GCP targets. These are markers we'll place on the ground that will be visible in the images that we capture. As you will see later, these will give us fixed known reference points that tie our aerial imagery to the real-world coordinate system when processing. Without GCPs, a non-RTK drone relies on its onboard GPS, which can be off by several meters. GCPs correct that by locking the map to a precise coordinates, so the final results are accurate enough for surveying, engineering, or any job where location really matters. These can be bought relatively cheaply, but you can also use anything that can be seen from the drone. So feel free to use your crafting skills and make your own with some paint, tiles, or whatever you happen to have lying around. Next up, mag nails. If you're going to be doing a job more than once, you need a way to fix your locations so that you don't have to redo the measurements each time. Sometimes you can leave GCPs in place or have some other permanent mark like paint, but if that's not an option, you can use these things which are called mag nails. These are nails that have a nice little divot in the middle that you can put the point of your tripod into. You hammer these into the ground and leave them in place. When you return, just put your GCP target over the nail. The GCP targets I have a nice little hole in the center just for this purpose. Then run your drone capture again. Next up, GNSS receiver. A good GNSS receiver is probably the most expensive item on the list. I'll be using an Emlid Reach RS3 in this video, but any good GNSS receiver should work just fine. We will use these to mark the exact location of the ground points that we place on the ground. The good news is, if you're mapping the same area repeatedly, you really need to only do this once. So maybe you can borrow or rent a GNSS receiver, or even have a surveyor come and set them up for you the first time. Finally, the drone we're going to be using is a DJI Mini 4 Pro, but any drone that allows you to fly with Litchi will work. The key is having reliable flight planning software so you can capture consistent overlapping images. Note that to use this with Litchi, you will need the DJI RCN2 controller connected to a phone or tablet. It won't work with the DJI RC screen. Now let's talk about the software and services we will use. First up is an N-trip service. To get precise positions when you're marking your GCPs, we'll connect the GNSS receiver to an N-trip service. This provides correction data so we can lock in those locations with survey grade accuracy very quickly. Depending on where you are, these are sometimes free, such as those in the New York or Michigan area, or you might have to subscribe to a paid service such as Point One Navigation. I'll be using Point One Navigation here since the nearest free one is a little too far away to give the level of accuracy we want. Next up, Litchi mapping software. To plan and automate those mapping flights, we'll use Litchi, which was selected based on the survey we performed. With Litchi's new mapping feature, it allows you to create missions with the proper overlap and altitude, which is essential for producing high quality mapping data. It's also one of the most affordable options out there for mission planning. Next up, WebODM GCP Editor Pro. Once we've collected our GCP data, we'll need to convert it into a format that WebODM can use. That's where the WebODM GCP Editor Pro comes in. GCP Editor Pro can be bought for as little as $29. You can get by without this, but it makes the process much smoother and easier, and for the price, it's worth the money to save some headaches. And finally, once all the data is collected, we'll process everything using WebODM. This is where the images and GCP data come together to generate accurate maps and models. In the next chapter, we'll dive into setting up the ground control points and capturing the data we need. Now let's quickly talk about setup prior to arriving on site. There are a number of steps that we can take before we head out to make our lives easier. Doing these ahead of time means less time on site, and it also reduces the chances of you forgetting to do something like properly setting your pole height. Don't ask me how I know this. First up, let's set up the Emlid RS3. If you're using something other than Emlid, you'll have to look up how to do that with your unit, but it should be a similar process. First, power on your RS3. Open the Emlid Flow app on your mobile device and log into your account. Logging in will make it much easier later, as we'll be able to download our data from the web instead of messing around with exports and import. Make sure you've connected your RS3 over Bluetooth or Wi-Fi. I'm going to use Bluetooth. Select the Survey tab at the bottom, then click on the button that says Add Project and give your project a name, and then pick the coordinate system that you'll be working in. Here we'll be using NAD 83 2011 New Jersey foot US. Select that to show additional details and take note of the EPSG code. In this case, the EPSG code is 6527. We will need that later. We will be connecting the receiver to an end-trip service to get fixed positions, and it's very important that you select a coordinate system here that matches your end-trip service. Otherwise, your results are not going to be accurate. The app helpfully provides a warning at the bottom reminding you of that. In this case, it says make sure your base or end trip is NAD 83 2011. This is a very complicated subject, and I'll link to some videos in the description that can go into a lot more detail. But for now, it's enough to say that you just need to make sure that whatever your project is set up for needs to be the same as your correction source. Now click Save. Before we start collecting points, we need to set the pole height and the collection method. I prefer to use the averaging option, which will take an average of 5 readings over 5 seconds instead of just recording instantly. You must be connected to the GNSS receiver for this option to be available, so make sure that you are. Then connect to the receiver, go into the project that you set up and click the plus sign as though you're about to start the collection of the first point. Click on the cog icon to adjust the survey settings. Make sure that fix only is on and set, and the collection mode set to averaging. If it's not already, I set mine to average over 5 seconds. Now click Save. Now tap the antenna height setting. Enter the measurement from the ground to the antenna reference point and confirm. In my case, the pole I'm attaching to is 2 meters tall, so I'm going to enter those details here, but in feet. Again, hit save to lock everything in. Now this ensures that all your data is correctly adjusted for the pole height, the capture method, and now we're ready to start collecting points once we get on site. Now let's set up the details of the CORS network. We won't actually connect here since we need the receiver to be outside for that to work, but we can set up the parameters, so all you have to do is select it later. I'm going to use point 1. If you don't have an account, you can try it out for a week for free. Go to point1nav.com and click on the Try for Free button. Then sign up for an account. That'll give you 7 days. Now go into the Profile tab in the Emlid Flow app and select My End-Trip Profiles. Here you can set up the end-trip details, and then you can just select those once you're on site. Hit the plus button and give the profile a name. Enter the URL, port, username and password for your end-trip system. Choose the correct mount point for your area. In many cases, if you've correctly entered the previous details, it will give you a list of mount points to select from. If you're using point 1 and need NAD 83 as we do, then you will select Polaris Local instead of Polaris. Get this wrong and your position will be off, so make sure you know which system your end-trip service is using. Turn on the option to send the receiver's position to the provider. Without that, if you're using any option that automatically connects to the closest point, it will likely fail. Again, click Save. Finally, let's set up the mission in Litchi, ready to fly the drone once we're on site. Because once we have the GCPs set, we will want to capture the data as soon as possible. This saves time and, more importantly, limits the likelihood of someone stumbling across your GCP targets and moving them. So to create the mission in Litchi, we're going to need to go to the new website, which is hub.flylitchi.com, and you're going to pull up this interface, and the first thing we're going to need to do is we're going to need to log in. So I'm going to click log in, and we're going to log in with our usual credentials. We need to be logged in because once you've logged in, it will save the mission, and then you can pull up that mission on your controller later on once you're on site. So now we're going to set up the mission here. If I click, it's going to give me this option. It says Waypoint or area mapping. We want it to be area mapping, and we're going to change the name, and we're going to call it Mini 4 Pro Demo. And the drone model, you can select from a big list here. Just make sure that you pick the right one, because depending on the app you're using, it won't work if you use the wrong one. So DJI Mini 4 Pro, and we click Create. By the way, picking the correct drone also changes the overlaps to make sure that they're correct for the camera that's on your drone. Click Create, and then the first click, so you click anywhere on the map to get started, but the first click, what that does is it sets the takeoff location. So I'm going to click here because we're going to be taking off just outside this house here. And now each click after this sets up the points of the mission. And I'm going to come all the way over here because I am going to put a GCP on this front yard here. So I'm going to click here, and we're just going to create a mission around half of this pond. I'm not going to do the whole pond, just going to do about half of it, and we're going to set some GCPs around the pond area. And then once you're done, you come to the first waypoint and you just click the check mark, and now you've got the mission created. And these little dots show you where the camera will be taking photos. One important thing, make sure that you extend beyond where your GCPs are going to be. And the reason for that is if you put the GCPs too close to the edge, then they might only show up in 1 or 2 photos. And you really need to show them up in a minimum of 3 and ideally at least 5. So just make sure that you've got good coverage. We're going to come down here and click on the flight settings, and we're going to adjust this. 262 feet. It's a bit high for what we want. I actually want to bring this down to probably about 150 feet. So let's just take 100 feet off of that. 162 feet. That should be good enough. And one nice thing here is it gives you this warning that basically says at this altitude, the camera might not be able to capture all of the photos, and it wants us to slow things down. So we'll slow this down to about 10 miles an hour. Okay, we should be good there. We've got a duration of 6 minutes. And I'm going to put some GCPs. I'm going to have one here. I'm going to put one down here somewhere, one over here, probably one here, maybe one in this car park. But I'm going to distribute my GCPs in here. But anyway, we're going to be well within this area. I'll stretch this out just a little bit, but that's it. That's the mission. You can do advanced settings. If you come down to this advanced area at the bottom and expand it, you can change your overlap, other different things, the direction and so on. But for the most part, that's all we need to do. We are now ready to capture this as soon as we've placed our GCPs. So here we are. This is one of the GCP locations we're going to be using. And we're going to just grab one of our GCPs. That's not a GCP. And this is what we're going to place on the ground. I'm picking a grassy area, but any area will do. And one thing that you do need to do is you need to spread them out. You need them to be like in all the corners as much as you can. And also try and get ones where there's an altitude change. So I'm going to place one here, but there's a hill over here. I'm going to place one down there as well. So it's fairly straightforward. There's nothing technical about this. You just literally grab some of these. These are just like tent pegs that you would, if you've ever been camping, you'd have used these before. And all we do is stick these in the corner and tap them down. You're going to want to stretch it out so that it's properly set out. Right, so that's That's down. And now we've got our location set. And now what we need to do is we're going to grab our GNSS receiver. We're going to place it in the center, and we're going to mark the first point on our survey. Before we start collecting the points with the receiver, we will need to set it up to receive corrections, and this is where we will use the N-trip settings we created earlier. So once the receiver has started, we will connect to it. I'm going to use Bluetooth because I'll also be using my phone as a Wi-Fi hotspot to allow me to roam around. It's critical that you have a data connection to the receiver, either connected to Wi-Fi or by using a data SIM card inserted into that. Without that, when you try to connect to the N-trip service, it will say waiting for corrections and never get any further than that. Once you're connected, go into the corrections input area and select the N-trip service you set up earlier. If you have everything set up correctly, have a good GPS signal and a good internet connection, the system should go from waiting for corrections to receiving corrections to fixed. If you have an Emlid RS3 and you're using tilt compensation, then you will need to go through a calibration step of moving the receiver around, and then you're ready to start measuring. Okay, so now we've got our GCP set, and I can see that I've got a fixed position. And now what we're going to do is we're going to go into our survey. We're going to pull up the survey that we set earlier, and we're going to go and we're going to place this in the center of the target. And I'm going to try and keep it as upright as I can. And I've got a little bubble level here that tells me if it's upright, but this does actually have tilt compensation, which makes life a lot easier. But what we're going to do is we're going to press plus. And by default, it's going to have a name of 1, and that's okay for what we need. So I'm just going to get this in the right position, and I'm going to press measure. And it's going to do over 5 seconds because that's what we said. And that's it. Our point is measured, and we have our first point collected. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to place GCPs in all the other locations, and we're going to go and measure all of those points as well. Now that the targets are in place and logged, it's time to fly our mapping mission. And as mentioned earlier, I'll be using the DJI Mini 4 Pro with Litchi to run the flight plan. Connect your phone or tablet in the usual way. Make sure that DJI Fly is not running, and then start the Litchi Pilot app. Once connected, wait until you have a good satellite connection and make sure that you can see the camera view in the bottom right. If the top left doesn't say Waypoint, then touch the top left to switch to Waypoint mode. Now click on the folder icon, select the mission you created earlier, and then press the play button. The drone will take off and then automatically capture based on the settings we used before. You should see the camera icon indicating that photos are being taken and hear the camera sound. Something to mention, the software is technically still in beta, so be aware of that and run at your own risk. There are certainly still some bugs. For example, when I ran this mission today, I found no files on the SD card with today's date. It turns out the files were there, but with a date about 2 weeks earlier. So just keep that in mind. Let the mission finish and then download the files to somewhere on your PC for processing later. So that's the field work complete. Place your targets, log them with the GNSS receiver, and run your mapping mission with Litchi. Don't forget to go back and pick up the targets and the landing pad if you used one before you leave the site. Now that we've captured our images and logged the ground control points, it's time to bring everything together and start processing. The first step is collecting the GCP coordinates we collected with the Emlid RS3 and preparing them for use in WebODM. Since we logged into the Emlid Flow app on our phone, we can now collect the data very easily by going to flow360.emlid.com and logging in. Assuming you did log in on the Emlid Flow app on your phone, you will see the project that we created, and we can simply click on the 3 dots, select Export, then CSV, all columns, and download everything to a location where we can find it later. Now we're going to bring that data into the GCP Editor Pro app and then use that app to identify the targets in the photos and tag them so the system knows where they are. The first step is to convert the spreadsheet we downloaded into something acceptable to GCP Editor Pro. GCP Editor Pro is pretty fussy about the formats it expects to see, so we need to get rid of any extra data. Start GCP Editor Pro, and on the first page you will see a section that says Download CSV Samples. There are 3 examples, and by clicking on any of them, it will download a CSV file with just the columns we need. Since our project uses a datum that was in feet, and only one of these has feet, we will download and open that one. Now open the spreadsheet downloaded from Emlid Flow 360, and we can see that we have columns that correspond to the columns we're looking for. You'll see that we have 4 columns: GCP label, northing, easting, and elevation in feet. So we will simply cut and paste the data from there into the new template and then save it as a new name. Now open the newly saved spreadsheet in GCP Editor Pro by browsing to it, and you should see the values load and display on the screen. Now we need to tell the system the coordinate reference system that we want to use. By default, the system will use EPSG 4326. EPSG 4326 is a code that identifies the WGS 84 coordinate reference system, which defines how latitude and longitude coordinates are represented on the Earth's surface. However, since we're using a local system, that isn't what we need. The one we actually want is EPSG 6527. We know this because we selected the coordinate system during the project setup in the Emlid Flow app, and it helpfully showed us the EPSG code, which is why I said to take note of it. But wait, there's a problem. If I put EPSG 6527, the Go to Next Step button is grayed out. EPSG is a way to identify datums maintained by a member of the European Petroleum Survey Group. But unfortunately, not all EPSG codes are supported by GCP Editor Pro, so we need to convert it into something else. In this case, it's going to be something called a Proj code. Fortunately, it's quite easy to do once you know how. Start by clicking on the EPSG hyperlink next to the box that you're trying to enter information into. That will open the epsi.io website. Type in the number we're after, in this case 6527, and press search. It will bring up the results of the search, and we can see the datum we're interested in, so click on that to get more details. If you keep scrolling down, you should come across a section that says export. Now click on the Proj.4 on the left hand side, and a strange string of characters will appear in the box next to it. That's the information we need to specify the coordinate system, so click on copy text. That will copy the Proj details into your clipboard. Now close that window, go back to GCP Editor Pro, and replace the text in the box with the details you just captured. The Go to Next Step button should now be available, and when you select it, you should see a map showing where all the GCPs were captured. Now we'll go through a process to connect the photos taken with the GCP target information. If you're not sure which GCPs belong with the name, you can click on them and it will highlight the GCP you've clicked on. Click on the Tag button next to the first GCP. Now you can browse to select some images. The easiest way to find those photos is to select the photos that you think will be relevant by using Shift and click, and then selecting the drop down from the Filter by Distance button. By default, this starts by finding photos that were taken within 5 meters of the GCP, but you can increase that until photos start to show up. Note that it is showing photos where the center of the photo is within 5 meters of the GCP location, so don't be surprised if you need to increase this quite a bit to make them show up. Ideally, you need to tag at least 3 photos, but more is better. If your targets are large and clear enough, you might be able to use the Detect GCP button to automatically tag the middle of the targets. So that's what we're going to do here. This option sometimes works great and sometimes doesn't work at all, so I will show you both. In the case of GCP1, the system did a pretty good job of identifying the GCPs and putting a little target icon on them showing where it thought they were. We just need to go through and verify that it did all of them correctly, fix any of them that were wrong, or in some cases just remove them from the list of photos to use. When you go back to the main screen, you should now see the number of images that were tagged, and as long as you correctly tagged 3 or more, that label should turn green. Now let's move on to GCP number 2. On this one, the Detect GCP button did not work at all well, so we will have to do it manually. To do that, hover the mouse over a picture near where the GCP should be. Press the Shift key and use the scroll wheel on the mouse to zoom in, and then click on the center of the target to mark the point. Once you've done that with at least 3 targets, click Save Changes and you'll be taken back to the main screen. Now do the same with all the remaining targets and click the button that says Go to the next step. Here you'll be shown a preview of the GCP file that you'll be importing into WebODM when you start processing. Click to download the text file and place it in the same directory as the photos you'll be processing. Note that you can also bring this file back into GCP Editor Pro in the future if you need to continue to work on the file. Now that we have the photos of the location and a file that ties our GCP points to those photos, we're ready to process everything in WebODM. Start WebODM in the usual way. You can do it on your own PC or in the cloud, and I have plenty of other videos covering those options. Create a project, give it a name, and then press the button that says Select Images and GCP. Here you select the photos that you want to process as you normally would, but now you also include the text file that you downloaded from GCP Editor Pro in the selection, and then just process in the usual way. Once the processing is complete, you can now open the map and check that it lines up properly with the base map. Note that the base map might not line up perfectly, and there are many good reasons why that should be, but it should be pretty close. I'm going to show you how this looks when I use GCPs and when I don't use the GCP file. It's exactly the same photos, but as you can see, there's quite a big difference in where those photos line up with the underlying map. Now we're going to look at the quality report. This will provide information on how accurate things are and give us a clue if there are any problems. To do that, click on the Download Assets button and select Quality Report. This will download a PDF that you can open and review. Find the section that says Survey Data and then look for the line that says Horizontal Accuracy CE90 meters. Under the column that says Absolute, there is a number that will give you a good indication of how accurate this map is. In this case, we have a value of 0.015 meters, which is 1.5 centimeters. And I think we can be pretty happy with that result. And that's it. From the field work all the way through to final processing, we've built a precision drone map using budget-friendly tools. By combining affordable gear with open source software like WebODM, you can achieve professional results without the professional price tag. If you found the video useful, please hit the like and subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next part where I will go into some best practices and troubleshooting tips. And as always, if you have any questions or want to share your own budget mapping setup, leave a comment down below. I'd love to hear what you're doing in the field.